Good morning, Philippines! This is Gretchen Ho coming to you live from the Vatican City in Rome, the seat of the papacy. This is our one new special coverage on Pope Francis. It is March 3, a Monday. We are bringing you Morning Matters because wherever you are, mornings matter. Let's get down to the stories that matter today. Pope Francis thanks the faithful for praying for his recovery, but urges them to continue praying for world peace. Appointees under the Presidential Communications Office were ordered to submit their unqualified courtesy resignation to give the new PCO secretary a free hand in performing his duties and functions. Later in the program, we spoke with Senate President Escudero about various issues, including the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte and illegal pogo activities. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and US President Donald Trump had a tense meeting at the White House, which strained relations between Kiev and Washington, D.C. In case you're wondering, yes, it is 8 a.m. out there in Manila, but here it is 1 a.m. and very dark in Rome, where we are covering possibly the biggest story of the year as Pope Francis wages a 2-week battle against bronchitis and double pneumonia. Here's our top story.
Pag-asa natin sa Diyos na siyang humihilom, ang Diyos na nagtagumpay laban sa karamdaman, sa kasalanan at sa kamatayan ay lumapit at humipo at magpagaling kay Pope Francis.
Filipinos in Rome stormed the heavens with prayers as Pope Francis got off on a rocky weekend. Several Pinoy priests and laymen came together Sunday afternoon to offer a special mass and a holy hour of prayer for the ailing 88-year-old pontiff who had a sudden worsening of his respiratory condition over the weekend. On his 14th day at the Gemelli Hospital, Pope Francis experienced a setback in his recovery with an isolated episode of bronchospasm that led to a coughing fit and the Pope inhaling vomit. He was immediately subjected to aspiration to clear his airways and was put on a non-invasive mechanical ventilator to help him breathe. The Pope's condition has since been stable, with the past 3 nights having been peaceful and no new respiratory attacks occurring. In his latest Angelus address published by the Holy See Press Office, Pope Francis thanked the faithful for their closeness in his moment of frailty and expressed gratitude for his doctors. Even in his moment of personal suffering, Pope Francis took time to remind everyone to continue praying for peace and remember those tormented in Ukraine and other troubled spots around the world. The tightly knit Filipino community got together yesterday at the Basilica del Sacre Cuore to offer a mass and prayers for the pontiff's continuing recovery.
Ang Basilica del Sacro Cuore ang tahanan ng oldest community ng mga Pilipino dito sa Roma. At dito rin sa simbahan kung saan huling nagmisa si Don Bosco, buhay na buhay ang boses, diwa at dasal ng mga Pilipino para sa Santo Papa.
Leading the celebration for the Filipino community was none other than Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, said to be one of Pope Francis's favorite cardinals.
In the power and working of the Holy Spirit, you give life to all things and make them holy, and you never cease to gather a people to yourself.
And speaking of favorite, it is no secret that Pope Francis is close to the hearts of Filipinos as well.
He do lots of things. He reached to everyone. Like here also, he touched my hand. Tayo yung sa lahat ng migrants sa buong mundo, tayo ang mahal na mahal ni Pope Francis. Hindi niya nakakalimutan na batiin ang mga Pilipino. Mahal ka namin, Lolo Kiko.
Pinoy, since very close si Pope Francis sa atin, malungkot, and at the same time hopeful na gumaling siya. No? And every day there's that rosary at the Vatican, and many of our Filipino kababayans are participating in that prayer for him.
Well, it seems some prayers have been granted. Just this morning, doctors say that they have discontinued mechanical ventilation, but they continue to monitor the complex situation with the prognosis still remaining guarded. Complicating the recovery, of course, is the long history Pope Francis has had with lung issues, with a part of his lung being removed when he was 21. In the meantime, Catholics, especially Filipinos here in Rome, continue to say the rosary for the Pope every night right here from the Vatican. We'll be bringing you more health updates right here from Rome. Stay tuned to One News, all sides, all the time. In other news, all appointees under the Presidential Communications Office were ordered to submit their courtesy resignations. Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin issued the directive through a memorandum last February 25. This aims to, quote, give new PCO Secretary J. Ruiz a free hand in performing his duties and functions. The directive covered all appointees in agencies, offices, and bureaus under the government's lead communication arm. According to the memo, they were given until February 28 to submit their courtesy resignation. In other news, Philippine National Police Chief General Romel Francisco Marbil has relieved Colonel Elmer Ragay from his post as head of the anti-kidnapping group. This follows concerns over the rescue of a 14-year-old Chinese student from an exclusive school in Taguig City. While Marbil acknowledged the successful recovery of the student, he stressed the need for a thorough review to address public scrutiny and ensure transparency. He also assured the public that the PNP would fully cooperate with the Senate investigation into the matter. U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky clash at the White House. The conversation in the Oval Office on Friday began with the usual pleasantries, but started to go downhill after Vice President J.D. Vance accused Zelensky of being ungrateful for U.S. support.
You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred. And I understand that. It doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America and for the good of the world.
Minutes later, it escalated into an unprecedented shouting match where Trump and Vance berated the Ukrainian wartime president. Two White House officials said there was no attempt to ambush Zelensky.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards.
Playing cards.
But right now, you don't.
Yeah,
You're playing cards.
Mr. President.
You're
Don't go away. We'll bring you more Morning Matters right after the break. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. The Commission on Elections said preparations for the 2025 midterm elections are, so far, so good. As of February 28, nearly 49 million official ballots have been printed. The printing is expected to be completed by March 14, with verification set for April 20. Meanwhile, since the start of the national campaign period on February 11, COMELEC has removed over 124,000 illegal campaign posters due to size violations, improper placements, and failure to use biodegradable materials. Around 2,500 notices have been issued to senatorial and party list candidates, with at least one party list group failing to comply immediately.
Basta po nakatanggap ng notice to remove, makipatanggal nyo na lang. Kasi, siyempre po, although siyempre pabor yan dahil may cases, pero definitely we will be filing cases. Kung hindi natin sila kaya mapatino dyan sa mismong pagpapaskil lang ng mga campaign materials, paano na dun sa mga ibang compliance po nila?
Senatorial candidates continue to woo voters ahead of the midterm elections. Here's the story.
Senatorial candidates Bam Aquino and Kiko Pangilinan went to Mandaluyong to campaign on Saturday. They were joined by Senator Risa Hontiveros. Aquino said they need to work harder, considering he's not within the Magic 12 in recent surveys.
Kailangan sipagan pa, kailangan suyurin pa, mangligaw pa sa mga kababayan natin. At kita naman po dito, hindi kami nag-iisa. Habang ang taong bayan gumagalaw, gagalaw rin po yung mga numerong yan.
Aquino vowed to push for more budget for the education sector if he would be elected. Pangilinan, meanwhile, reiterated his plans for food security.
Mapapababa ang presyo ng pagkain, yung food security, tsaka pagsuporta sa agrikultura. Naniniwala ako, pag nalaman ng ating mga kababayan, sa tulong ng media, na yan ang ating isinusulong, dadagdag pa. Marami pang masusuporta sa atin.
Akbayan First nominee Chel Diokno was also present.
Kailangan po natin ng mga progresibong kandidato na lalaban para sa kapakanan ng ordinaryong Pilipino. Handang-handa po kami ipaglaban kayo.
Meanwhile, PDP-Laban bets were in Calamba, Laguna to woo voters. Aside from laying down their platforms for education and poverty, they also emphasized their opposition against Vice President Sara Duterte's impeachment.
9 lang po ang kailangan natin para itigil ang pinakamalaki na injustice na gagawin sa atin ng Kongreso.
Kapag yung team na yan ay nanalo uli, tuloy-tuloy na nilang tatanggalin ng Vice President.
Re-electionist Senator Bongo believes that it will undergo due process.
Based on evidence yan. Kung walang ebidensya, wala.
Last Friday, the administration's bets for senators went to San Jose del Monte, Bulacan. President Bongbong Marcos himself was present to ask voters for their support.
Mga kababayan, maliwanag na maliwanag. Siguro naman sa narinig ninyong talumpati na ang tinutunguan po ng alyansa ay ang kaunlaran at ang kapayapaan. At aabutin po natin yan kapag tayo ay magkaisa. Kaya po, ito po na siguro ay isa sa pinakamagandang halimbawa na ihaharap namin sa taong bayan ng pagkakaisa, nagtutulungan para po makapagserbisyo sa tao. Ang kailangan po natin ay ang mga solusyon, hindi po ang mga maiinit at malalakas na mga masasakit na salita.
Cases of hand, foot, and mouth disease in the country have tripled. That's according to the Department of Health. DOH recorded 7,598 cases from January to February 22, significantly higher than the over 2,000 cases reported in the same period in 2024. Most of those affected were children aged 9 and below. Symptoms of HFMD included sores or blisters on the hands and feet, fever, and throat pain. Let's go to the world of sports. In the UAAP, the FEU Lady Tamaraws outplayed the Ateneo Blue Eagles on Sunday. They snapped a 2-game losing skid with a 5-set escape of Ateneo in their first-round encounter in season 87. FEU banked on its net defense down the stretch, with its key players all coming through with crucial blocks. The FEU men's team also tamed Ateneo to keep their streak alive in round 1 of the volleyball tournament. They displayed resilience, bouncing back from a third-set stumble to seal the win in 2 hours and 2 minutes. And when we returned, we had the chance to talk about impeachment. The impeachment trial against Vice President Sara Duterte and other important matters in politics with Senate President Cheese Escudero. Don't go away. Morning Matters will be back. Joining us this morning is the man of the hour, the man at the center of the looming impeachment trial. We have him with us on the show to share a little bit of time. We have Senate President Cheese Escudero joining us on Morning Matters. Welcome to our show.
Checking the people behind you. Good morning. Good morning, Gretchen. Good morning to our televiewers.
Speaking of what's behind us, pwede ba natin i-play yung picture kanina?
Oo nga, nakita ko kanina eh. Nasaan na yun? Nawala.
Ito, yan.
Ayan.
Oh, napansin nyo yan.
That's the Senate session hall. That's not how the session hall will look like once we start the impeachment trial. The chairs will be facing the other way.
And then the senators will all be...
The senators will be facing on the back part of the session hall, not facing the rostrum.
Hindi siya yung hindi siya yung
Hindi
parang
siya yung typical Senate session.
na...
Hindi.
Okay. And then who will be in the middle of that? Will it
The
be
witness. The witness to be called by either party, and both parties will be on either side, left or right side. The defense and the prosecution, the respondent and the prosecution.
This will be like a normal court case. I mean, you as a lawyer and seeing this,
Yes.
pareho lang.
Yes, we will follow the rules on evidence, the rules of procedure of the rules of court, which has supplementary application to impeachment trials.
Well, knowing the nature of impeachment trials, we do know that it is quintessentially political in nature. And sinabi nga dito sa binabasa ko, no, that unlike in criminal proceedings, proof beyond reasonable doubt is not required for conviction in impeachment. Past Senates have declined to refer to a judicial standard of proof, aka substantial evidence. I mean, what will you be weighing here in terms of indicting or convicting the
There are
Vice
decisions
President?
of the Supreme Court, both here and abroad, that basically says, because it's political and the framers of the Constitution decided that the process will be political, having senators as judges who are politicians, the required proof is whatever the senators says it is. So whatever will convince a senator to convict or to acquit, that is the amount or level of proof needed to acquit or convict a respondent. Walang standard ng proof beyond reasonable doubt, preponderance of evidence, substantial evidence, walang ganon. Depende sa kada senador kung ano sa kanya ang tingin niyang sapat na ebidensya para makakonvict.
Paano po kung ayaw buksan yung envelope? I mean, what happened with the former President Estrada? Ganon yung nangyari. Dito, we're talking about confidential funds. Paano kung ayaw ilabas yung mga confidential na dokumento? I mean, could that be an impediment, or is it, with the nature of confidential funds, dapat talagang nasa COA yung impormasyon na yun?
Well, we'll cross the bridge when we get there. I don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse by saying that we will or we will not. That will be part of the trial itself. But to cite a precedent, the Corona impeachment, you were in college, as you said. The Supreme Court actually issued a TRO preventing the Senate Impeachment Trial Court from opening his foreign currency deposit accounts. And the Senate voted to follow the Supreme Court decision. So it depends. We'll see once we get there.
Well, you said the Senate will vote in order to determine if you will follow the Supreme Court. Is that how it goes?
No, the Senate at that time voted.
Okay.
If you ask me, any decision of the court, I will follow as a general rule unless someone raises a point and puts it to a vote. It happened even previous to that, during the impeachment of Chief Justice Davide. The Supreme Court also issued a TRO to prevent the House from putting it to a vote. But the House did not follow that and nevertheless put it to a vote, but it did not reach the one-third, so the impeachment complaint was dismissed.
Okay, so that's how you are protecting the independence of the Senate. I mean, that they were.
Yes, because under the Constitution, the Senate is the sole trier of impeachment complaints. So it is subject still to the decision of the Senate, hopefully without leading to a constitutional crisis.
Well, speaking of crossing bridges, one bridge that the Senate has crossed, your office...
There's a bridge that fell too, so...
Totoo yan. Was the issuance of Special Order number 2025-015 for the establishment of an administrative support group on February 20. You also laid down a timeline for the impeachment trial.
Yes.
Does this officially formalize that timeline, that this will happen after the State of the Nation address?
This is a working timeline, given certain realities, given the procedures that we have to first complete before trial would begin. Trial being defined as the admission of evidence already. So may narinig ako, for example, na isa sa mga prosecutor nagsabi, sorry kung apatolo ng konti, gusto rin nila bukas yan mag-trial na. Basa muna ng konti kasi kahit na mag-convene kami today, kailangan muna namin magpadala ng summons. May 10 araw si VP Sara para sumagot. May 5 araw sila para sumagot mula matanggap nila yung answer ni VP Sara. So kahit gustuhin namin, di naman pwede magsimula yung trial bukas. May proseso pang susundan.
Okay, so this is a working timeline, which means the other senators are free to contest it?
Yes, it will be decided upon once the impeachment court convenes on June 2 or June 3 when we resume session.
How about the caucus that you were hoping to have with other senators?
I was not hoping. Someone else was hoping to have a caucus. But when I consulted, not everyone is available nor keen to do such a caucus. But even if we meet for coffee, for lunch, dinner, or breakfast, we can't do anything because we're not in session. Whatever it is we agree upon cannot be implemented until and unless there is a session.
Well, your decision to implement this timeline, I mean, I know you've participated in so many debates about what forthwith means. But isn't 5 months too long? And doesn't it defeat the purpose of that provision?
Well, let's see. Corona impeachment, it was filed December 13. Senate had a week of sessions, yet they went into a Christmas recess and New Year's recess, which is about 1.5 months before they started the trial. Nobody complained about forthwith not being immediately...
Pasko naman yun.
Kaya, Pasko naman yun. Sige na, i-argue mo na. Si Mercy Gutierrez, they had a whole day after the impeachment complaint was filed. They did not convene the impeachment court, and they convened it again roughly a month and a half dahil may scheduled recess din. Wala ding nagreklamo tungkol sa forthwith doon. Pangatlo, yung Senado at Kongreso nag-decide na ito yung calendar namin. Kaya February 5 kasi magsisimula na yung election period for national officials, the senators. At may election tayo sa May. So kung sasabihin mo may Pasko yun, may election din ito. Kaya ang haba ng recess namin. So for us to adjust our recess, when the Senate never adjusted its recess for an impeachment trial, would be treating the case against VP Sara totally separate, different, and distinct, when they should all be the same. There's nothing special about the case against VP Sara. It's only one of the impeachment cases the Senate has to decide upon. Number 4, the Constitution says forthwith, but the rules of the House says or uses the word immediately. It says, impeachment complaints shall be filed with the Secretary General of the House, who shall immediately refer it to the Speaker. 3 impeachment complaints were filed last December. Up to today, they haven't been referred, despite the word immediately. If that's how the House treats the word immediately in their rules, 2.5 months, in fact, up to today, magti 3 months na, then who are they to claim or to push us to define forthwith as immediately when the word immediately itself is found in their rules and they don't seem to be rushed by it? Kung yung mga complaint at di nagmamadali, Gretchen, ba't kami magmamadali? Again, we're not delaying this. We're just not rushing it either.
Okay, when it comes to requesting for a special session, does it need to come from your office or could it come from majority of the senators?
The Senate, the Constitution states, and I'm nearly quoting, the Senate President, in consultation with the Majority Leader and the Minority Leader with the consent of the Speaker, may request for a special session for urgent legislation. No other grounds. Now, the Senate and the House will convene automatically whenever the President dies, becomes incapacitated, or a majority of the Cabinet members says that he is or is impeached. The same is true for the Vice President.
Ito po yung sa Senado.
Ito yung sa Constitution. Sa Senado at Kongreso. Hindi kasi pwede mag-session ng Senado nang wala ang Kongreso. It cannot just be us.
Meron din sa Constitution nakalagay, the President can request for a special session at any time. It doesn't say naman it's for legislation. Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to that. And then when he declares martial law, we have to convene. When you need to proclaim or canvass votes for President and Vice, we have to convene. Galing sa amin yun. The President can call a special session at any time. So, nung gusto yung gawin ko, magsinungaling ako, uy, may urgent legislation pero impeachment talaga take up namin. Di ba parang obvious na yun? Parang ngayon pa? So, I'm not planning to do that, really, because there is no urgent legislation for us to pass at this time. And it will simply be a cover, a flat-out lie, for me to say there is that urgent legislation when there's none. Right now that we need to pass.
Well, there are those who argue that an election is, being considered, plus a personal break by the senators. I mean, aren't you putting personal interests before?
Whose interest?
Personal interest. Kayo po as a Senate body ay kailangan magbakasyon. Alagaan muna yung kampanya. Ay di mo na asikasuhin ito.
I'm not up for re-election. So I'm not campaigning. I'm reporting for work 4 times a week. We have a 4-day work week. So
Hindi po kayo yung mga kasama po ninyo.
I don't see that. It would be unfair to say that. So dun sa mga nagmamadali, clearly they are anti-Sara. Clearly they are pro-impeachment. So tell me who's saying na dapat mag-session kami and I'll tell you what their color is. And so far as this issue is concerned. And I've said, hindi ko sila papakinggan, hindi ako magpapapressure sa kanila because clearly they're biased. Ang problema sa mga taong yan, kakamadali. Bibigyan mo lang ng rason si VP Sara kung talagang yun ang gusto mo, ma-impeach siya, na umakyat sa korte, baka mas tumagal pa. Kamukha ng ginawa nila ngayon. Di umano, minadali daw yung pag-file. Kaya nga kino-question ngayon ni VP Sara, may petition for prohibition siya ngayon sa Korte Suprema. Baka mamaya manalo siya ron, edi sa kakamadali, edi lalo pang naunsami at tumagal doon sa mga may gusto niyan. We will proceed prudently, with caution, and in accordance with law. Regardless of what those who seem to be in a rush may want us to do, we will not follow suit. We will not be pressured by them either.
Okay, former Senator Drilon said that we could be in the midst of a constitutional crisis if the Supreme Court comes out with a decision on that while the impeachment court is convened and while the trial is ongoing. Ano po mangyayari kung sakasakaling itigil nga po nila? Will you also put it to a vote?
Mas maganda na ngayon. Ngayon na nila ilabas bago pa kami magsimula, hindi ba? Let all of these petitions, either for mandamus, for us to convene, or to prevent the impeachment from proceeding, be resolved by the Supreme Court now. Instead of it being resolved or an order being issued while we are undergoing the process. But again, Gretchen, this happened before. The House was right smack in the middle of voting on the impeachment complaint against then Chief Justice Davide. And a TRO was issued that we cannot put it to a vote. The House ignored it and proceeded to put it to a vote. However, it lost. So it became moot and academic. But if it had won, then the impeachment would have been filed before the Senate.
So ganun po yung magiging proseso niyan. The SC comes out with the decision, and if the impeachment court is convened, they bring it to the Senate impeachment court for a vote.
Yes.
Okay, so it does not mean that they have power over the Senate. That's clear.
Given the precedents, it's not automatic. But as I said, as a rule, I will respect the decision of the court unless a member of the court stands up to question that decision of the court. Then we will have to put it to a vote.
Okay, with the timeline that you presented, does it mean that it will be the 20th Congress already standing as an impeachment court?
That will decide it, yes.
And that is the weight of the upcoming midterm elections. Kung sino po ang mananalo dito ay magsisilbing hukom dito.
Sila na yung magpapasya kung guilty or hindi.
So makikita po natin yan sa 1 to 12. May sa surveys, hindi pa naman yung sigurado, pero di ba?
Well, more or less, yes. More or less, yes. But then again, that's why it's a political process.
What can you say about those who think that you might be using this as a political bargaining chip? I mean, to curry favors, and another one is to become vice president.
I already stated that I have no interest whatsoever because of a simple reason, delicadeza. In fact, I would make the same call on everyone else who are involved in the impeachment process to say the same thing, that they're not interested and that they're not doing this for that purpose.
And how do you ensure the fairness of this trial when some of the senators have actually already made public their stance when it comes to impeachment?
Well, I won't stop reminding them that they should not. They should stop and prevent themselves because not a single piece of evidence has been presented and admitted in court. How can they say that they'll vote this way or that way? They should wait for the evidence to be presented, admitted, and based on the evidence, decide on the issues presented before us.
Of course, this is happening against a political backdrop of the Dutertes and the Marcoses fighting. How do you assure the public that this will be a fair trial?
That's what we've been trying to do so far. That's why we're not listening to the voices from either side. One side right now, since we're not conducting the trial, the noisy side are those who are against the Vice President. Once we're conducting trial, the noisy side will be those for the Vice President. We are doing this, calling it as we see it in accordance with the law and the Constitution, regardless of, again, whatever voices, opinions, or positions, biased individuals or groups may have in connection with this issue. We will not be swayed by this by the political noise coming from them.
And yet, it's being talked about in the campaign circles. What is your take on the ongoing word wars between the Marcoses and the Dutertes? Umaanghang po yata ang mga salita.
Oh, yung bago nilang spokesperson parang palaban ngayon.
Sino to? Si Yusek Claire.
Si Attorney Claire.
Sabi niya, siya ang magko-correct dun sa mga fake news na lumalabas. At siya rin po at nagsabi na maaaring yung mayorya, kung hindi daw po kayo gagalaw, ay maaaring mag-file yung mayorya.
Sabi ko baka patawarin na lang natin, baka excited pa kasi bago lang, okay lang yan.
Bakit po kaya? I mean,
Huwag na nating patulan dahil baka excited lang siya.
what is your view?
Lilipas din yun.
What is your view on what's happening? I mean, bakit the sudden pivot in tone the Marcos administration?
Well, opposites attract, I guess, and sometimes what you lack, you fill in the gaps with respect to the things that you lack. Masyadong mabait si Presidente. Hindi siya namamatol. So baka kailangan ng isa sa palasyong namamatol. I don't know. Really, I'm not deciding on who gets in and who is to be excluded in the palace. But I guess it makes sense that they try to get someone who's not exactly the same as the president in order to present a full picture of the position of the palace.
What spurred her appointment, and she was mentioning the recent allegations that President Bongbong Marcos is veering towards dictatorship
yeah.
to keep his post. And what do you think about that?
I also issued a statement against that in relation to that. I said it's like the pot calling the kettle black in relation to President Duterte saying those things in vis-a-vis President Marcos. But given my inner workings with the president, I don't see that. I don't agree with the former president. I don't see such tendencies on the part of President Marcos. He's very inclusive. He's not assertive as his predecessor was. And I don't see the tendencies former President Duterte is referring to in relation to President Marcos.
Well, what can you say about I mean, sabi niyo po, mabait masyado ang presidente.
Hindi na masyado yata lately parang.
Bumabanat na din.
Well, dapat lang. Kasi naman, hindi naman pwedeng gano'n na lang yun.
So matagal niyo na pong gustong makita yung ganyan.
I think all of us have that side in us. It's a question of when it will awaken inside of you. But some of us,
But why do you
have
think
that
is
side.
the former president saying these things?
It's part of the campaign rhetoric, I guess, because he is not like that in official functions. He's actually very jolly. He's very direct to the point, though. But perhaps it's the campaign rhetoric. It's yung init ng kampanya. Kaya siguro off-script minsan at lumalabas yung talaga nasa dibdib at isipan niya.
Well, he seems to imply that there's a ploy here to put others in power to take the place of his daughter. Bukod doon, yung kay presidente.
Well, hindi naman kailangan ng ploy kasi vice president yung anak ni dating Pangulo na papalit sa kanya kung may mangyari sa kanya. You don't need to dig deep to see that plot, really. That is always a possibility. It's a constitutional possibility.
But because if the position of the vice president is vacated, the president can appoint whoever he wants, right?
No, from Congress.
From Congress. So it could be you because you're also...
I already said no.
So is that a definite answer? What if it's offered to you?
Yes, if it's offered to me, I would say no.
Could you reject the call of duty?
It's not a call of duty. I have a duty here right now.
But you ran for vice president also in the past, diba?
Then that's an additional reason. Then that's an additional reason why I should not.
Why?
Because I was not chosen. I was not apparently the choice of the people. So why would I be now accepting a nomination? Again, the main reason is delicadeza. If the impeachment will happen, and if that will be the outcome, none of us should benefit from it.
Okay.
Again, and not only me, even members of the House for that matter.
So you're encouraging everyone to...
Who had the part in it.
Again?
Who had the part in it. Who had a part in it.
Okay. Okay. Speaking of campaign rhetoric, what do you think of the Kill 15 senators remark of the former president? Sabi nyo, nasanay na tayo. 6 na taon nating naririnig yan eh. Pero we also had General Torre here who said na hindi naman pwedeng, dahil lagi natin naririnig kung sinabi nga niya na papatayin niya ito, weeks later, ang dami nga namatay. At some point, that has to stop.
Ang sabi ko, nakakalungkot na parang manhid na tayo, pati ako, sa mga ganyang uri ng statement ni dating Pangulong Duterte. Parang sanay na tayo. Pangalawa, sabi ko, I don't feel alluded to. I never felt threatened by that statement of the former president. Third, I think General Torre has taken steps to file the necessary cases against him. Whether it's sedition or bomb threat, there's actually a PD, sa bomb threat. That it's a joke, that it's a lie, that it's something you laugh about, is not an excuse, does not excuse you from the commission of that crime. It's a special law, it's a mala inse law, meaning intent is irrelevant. So there is a violation of the law should they decide to pursue it against the former president for making or cracking that joke.
So do you think this investigation is relevant if they do find enough merit to bring it to court?
Whenever there's a complainant, for as long as it's not a private crime, the police or any person can actually file that case, as General Torres done.
But do you agree with the campaign style of the former president? I mean, ito, medyo malalakas ang ganyang mga salita. Napunta na rin ang vice-presidente sa ganun, na yung kill threat niya dun sa...
I think the voters will have to decide on that, Gretchen. And I think the voters will decide on that. You see it roughly in the numbers of the officials right now, whether they're running or not, if it's going up or coming down. And at the end of the day, it's the voters who will decide that. Gusto pa ba nila yung ganyang tipo ng pangampanya o hindi sila sang-ayon doon? Gusto ba nila yung tipo ng pangampanya ng kasalukuyang Pangulo, si Pangulong Marcos, o hindi? Makikita natin yun sa boto ng mga tao sa mga kandidato nila. And you and I will be one of them, voting for these candidates.
Well, sabi nga ni COMELEC Chairman George Garcia, pwede naman ang negative campaigning. Just keep it classy.
Hindi naman talaga bawal. There's no law. To be clear, there's no law prohibiting...
Pero, I mean, this is different. Those are actual threats. I mean, when you say you're gonna kill someone, o patayin na lang natin ito, where do you draw the line?
Again, there are laws. Will it fall under grave threats? Does it fall under sedition, given that it's a majority of senators? Does it fall under the PD that punishes a bomb threat joke? Kasi sabi niya, bobombahin niya eh. In that case, it's the prosecutors that will decide if they will file the case, and it's the courts that will decide if they will convict him.
Or unlawful utterances.
It's not an unlawful utterance. No, it's not.
It's not? Why is it not?
Not automatically. Again, grave threats, the person has to feel threatened. In sedition, there has to be an actual feeling on the part of the people depriving them of trust and belief in government. Insofar as the bomb joke is concerned, that's easier to prove. That's mala inse. That you cracked that joke, that you said it is only a joke, it's not a defense.
But General Torre actually filed 4 unlawful utterances dito. Kasi sabi niya, yun nga na...
Ano, libel? Ano yung unlawful utterance?
Yun, it's actually dalawa yung final niya na case. Unlawful utterances
shotgun na siguro
inciting to sedition.
Shotgun na siguro yan para hindi man tumama yung isa, dalawa, tatlo, apat, at least isa man lang tumama.
Meron pang isa sinabi, si Vice Presidente, hinihikayat ang mga tao na maglabas ng kanilang sama ng loob sa gobyerno. Which sabi ni Yusek Castro, I mean, they're looking at inciting to sedition here. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, who is they? Who is they?
Sila, yung Office of the President. Pero hindi naman daw sila magpa-file ng kahit ano. Pero yun ang sinasabi nila na baka this is bordering inciting to sedition.
I think she should let the DOJ or the police talk in relation to that and not her. Because it would appear that it's the President actually saying it whenever it comes from that podium. Because if indeed that was the intention, this was said way before the impeachment was filed. So why was this not included? That would have been a good venue to hold the Vice President accountable for this thing. But given that the palace has no role supposedly in this, I think she should better leave that to the police, the DOJ, and if at all, the House Prosecution Panel.
Wait, talking about the holding the Vice President accountable, I mean, how do you envision, I know you don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse, but how do you envision this to go in terms of witnesses that you'll be summoning and also the amount of evidence?
We will see that during the preliminary conference, where we will require the parties to present their respective testimonial and documentary evidence for early marking and submission of judicial affidavits.
And that will be the Vice President and the
prosecution panel.
The prosecution panel
represented by their lawyers. Not necessarily the Vice President herself, unless she decides to attend.
So
she's not
pwedeng
required
lawyer
to
na lang
attend.
po niya.
Under the law, under the impeachment rules, she's not required to attend unless she will be identified.
So they will present their defense against the articles of impeachment.
Prosecution muna.
Prosecution muna. Yung sa
Mauna yung
kanila.
prosecution.
Oo.
Presenta nila yung ebidensya laban kay VP Sara.
Okay. So the prosecution panel is going to be organized by,
The House.
because they were the ones who passed on the articles of impeachment to the Senate.
They elected a prosecution panel, but it's not limited to them. They can engage the services of a private prosecutor. Very much like what they did when you were still in college. They engage the services of lawyers, private lawyers.
Okay, so between now and then, what will the Senate be doing?
Well, to
Before
begin
June 2?
We are reviewing our rules. We are setting up the Senate already because preparations have to be made for security, for allowing visit. You have to balance the between security and making sure that it is public, it is open to the public. Number 3, we are engaging the services of our own counsel because we might need external counsel to handle cases filed against the Senate by either party. And if I were the prosecutors, kesa magmadali sila, maghanda na lang sila. Ako nga abogado nag-aaral eh. Sila din siguro dapat mag-aral din. Hindi lang nung law, nung batas, hindi lang nung rules, pero pati na rin nung kaso nila at ebidensya nila. We will not tolerate any delay, Gretchen, insofar as this case is concerned. Ikaw na mismo nagsabi, ang haba na nung panahon. 3 buwan, 4 na buwan, 5 buwan, siguro naman wala na silang dahilan o wala na silang rason magdahilan na, ay teka lang, di kami handa, ay teka lang, wala pa. Wala nang gano'n na to. Pag nagsimula to, tuloy-tuloy na to.
And mga gaano katagal po? I mean, pwede kasing...
I think about 2 to 3 months from the time it starts.
The whole trial?
Yes. So you're looking at, if it starts at July 30, August, September, October, before we go on recess. Tama, may recess na naman usually October. Before we go on our October recess, matatapos to.
Okay. Where does that put all the legislation that you need to do, I mean, as a Senate body, does that push that all back? And ito talaga, this will take up your whole time and your whole schedule?
No, hindi ako papayag. Dati na-apektuhan talaga yung session. But I will not agree to that. That's why in the proposed calendar, I said the impeachment trial should be in the morning, 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and then our sessions will regularly open at 3 p.m. In the meantime, we can authorize committees to conduct hearings during the session, not during the impeachment trial, so that the committees can still function, and they can still do that on a Thursday or on a Friday. So we might go back to a 5-day work week para makapag-committee hearings sila ng pag may session, Thursdays and Fridays, and then regular session namin will begin at 3, very much like how we do it today.
Well, I do ask that because there are 3 years left to President Marcos's term. Also, to your term, 3 years left, and there's a lot of things to do. But before we get to that, let's take a quick break. Morning Matters will be back. Welcome back. You're still with us on Morning Matters. And of course, we have this morning Senate President Escudero. Now we're done with the impeachment issues. Let's go to the other things as we'd like to do in the
Nagsawa
Senate.
ka din? Buti naman.
Na huwag naman na makonsumo nitong impeachment process. No? Okay, as Senate President, what would your priorities be? As I mentioned, you have 3 years left in your term. Going into the next Congress, ano po ang priority legislation natin?
Let's clarify first. I serve at the pleasure of my colleagues. I don't have a term. I can be replaced anytime we have sessions. So I don't have a term until 2028. I serve at the pleasure of my colleagues. So I will be sitting as Senate President on June 2 unless I am replaced, until June 13 when we adjourn unless I am replaced, and on July 28 when we resume unless I am replaced before that or after that. So, having said that, priority legislation, we're finishing most of them actually. Most of the items in the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council, the priority measures of the President, we will finish, hopefully before the 19th Congress adjourns. And most of it are already in the pipeline, either in the bicameral stage or will be adopted in third reading when we resume on June 2, June 3.
So ano po yung yung bills na that you're looking at?
The
Priority
optimization
bills.
of government bill, which is basically the right sizing bill, the mining fiscal regime bill, the SIMEPA, which is the rationalization of some taxes, lowering principally the income taxes on the stock market to encourage investors in the stock market. Let me see, the Department of Water, the 99-year lease, which will allow Filipinos and foreigners to actually enter into a lease agreement for 99 years and not merely 25, as we are usually used to. Let me see, the right-of-way law, which will hopefully address the problems associated with infrastructure projects, whether in the DOTR or in the DPWH. Let me see, the NHA charter law, the DBP charter law, the Land Bank charter law, all of which are pending third reading or bicameral conference committee, which we hope to approve before we adjourn in the 6 days we will be having sessions come June in the middle of all of this impeachment thing.
Well, did the President also communicate his own urgent bills, LEDAC bills?
These are his urgent bills.
Ayun, yun po yung nabanggit po ninyo.
Yung mga hindi urgent bills ng Kongreso mismo yung nagpa-file na matatalakay din namin is the Barangay Postponement Bill. Because we have scheduled barangay elections in December, but the House passed one already, and the Senate passed the postponement bill already. The difference is Senate wants it for 4 years, the House wants it for 6 years. So they still have to reconcile and meet in BICAM to find a way out insofar as that is concerned. The Senate and the House also passed the giving of allowance to barangay health workers, but only for 5th and 6th class municipalities and not for all because of the budgetary constraints that the national government has insofar as giving them an allowance or salary is concerned.
Okay. One of the things that was declared urgent was the postponement of the BARM elections.
Yes.
I mean, why did you think that was necessary?
The President asked for that. According to him, based on security briefings given by the National Security Advisor, the military and uniformed personnel, the deployment of our forces would be too thin in that area given the simultaneous elections being held nationwide. So they needed time to redeploy their forces in areas that they feel like they feel needs more people. So hence the postponement for a short period of 5 months only.
When it comes to right-sizing government, I do remember the President mentioning that in his SONA. Medyo matagal-tagal na nga po yun, ano? I kind of wondered what happened to that. But it does remind me of what President Trump is doing in his own government with the Doge. With the Doge. But I mean, what do you mean when, what does the President mean when he says he wants to right-size the government? Saan ba babawasan ng taba?
We actually changed it to government optimization because right-sizing gave a wrong connotation or negative connotation na precisely magbabawas. I did that when I was governor, for example, in 2019. We optimized government. We ended up creating more positions than abolishing positions. But we made sure that the positions we created were the ones that we needed. Doctors, nurses, midwives, and IT personnel. So when we computed, we actually created more positions. Now in the Senate, we're doing the same thing now. Given that we're transferring to a new building, and now from being lessees, we'll be lessors, we need new offices, we need new staff. So we are ending up actually creating more positions and more offices and not really abolishing positions, but realigning and reallocating
ano po
positions.
nakikita niyo dito sa government natin ngayon? I mean, saan tayo may kailangan? O saan tayo sumusobra, kumukulang?
Halimbawa, kasama sa optimization is, ang pulis, ba't sila nagbabantay sa Camp Crame? Ba't sundalo nagbabantay sa Camp Aguinaldo? Bakit yung driver ng general dito sa Metro Manila, pulis din? Di ba dapat driver yan? Di ba dapat security guard yun? Bakit yung nagluluto sa mess hall sa mga kampo ay sundalo rin? Di ba dapat cook yun o chef yun? It's a question of reallocating. Bakit yung secretary ng superintendent, yung secretary ng principal, teacher din? Kaya ang gandang tingnan ng ating student-to-teacher ratio, pero pag tingnan mo sa field, 1:40, 1:50, 1:60. So it's all about optimization with respect to the existing positions. Not really solely abolishing positions. Ang daming job order at contractual workers sa pamahalaan, kailangan naman natin sila maging permanente. So it includes that too.
Regularization of government employees.
Yes, because if indeed they've been there for 13 years, 15 years, then isn't that best proof that we need them? isn't that the best evidence that they should be there on the longer term?
Well, that's good, but if we have the budget, the proper budget for it, I mean, does
Well-
the 2025 GAA, flow into that, the optimization goals?
Yes, because of the MPBF, the Miscellaneous Personal Benefit Fund. Any new office that's not being created, although it's in the plantilla of an agency, will not be released by the DBM to them. So it's all retained by the DBM in one common fund, one lump sum fund, so that there is a need for them to justify whatever new offices they will create. Now, under the optimization bill, then they need to present a plan first, a holistic plan, taking into account ARTA, the Anti-Red Tape Act, taking into account DICT, dahil kung mag-digitize tayo, baka hindi naman na kailangan ng ganun karaming tao. Also taking into account AI, na baka hindi naman din kailangan ng ganun karami at ilagay natin yung tao kung saan kailangan.
Hey, Senator, speaking of the budget, there are many questions over what is happening at the BICAM. Bakit daw may insertions from the original proposed NEP to the GAA, 200 plus billion in insertions. Bakit nga po ba napapayagan yung ganun? Oh.
Alam nga namang wala.
Hindi ba nasa batas po natin na bawal ng dagdagan, pwedeng bawasan, kung ano yung pinapose na executive?
Bawal dagdagan yung total. Yes. So if the proposed budget is 6.3 million, we cannot make it 6.4 trillion. But when you're saying we should not make insertions to the NEP, does that mean the budget as proposed by the President in NEP is a perfect document, etched in stone that we cannot change? That's why under the Constitution, the power of the purse is with Congress. The executive proposes, and Congress deliberates and discusses if this is indeed the perfect, correct, and needed allocation. So I don't think they should frown upon insertions or amendments made by Congress to the proposed budget of the President. That is part and parcel of the process. And for you to say that we cannot change anything there is actually wrong, because that is not in accord with the principle of checks and balances in a democracy that we have in a Republican system of government.
Well, of course, the thing that's also being questioned are the blanks in that budget over in the BICAM. Ano po ba yung kwento doon? Bakit nga po may blanco?
All bicameral conference committee reports contains a paragraph in the last statement that everyone signed, that any errors, mistakes, or wrong figures can be corrected or will be corrected by the Committee on Finance and by the Committee on Appropriations of the House, because it's such a long document. It consists of about roughly 200,000 lines, budgetary item lines. So, nakalagay doon na kaya pwede nilang i-correct yon, pwede nilang punuan yon, pero kung may conflict sa BICAM at sa enrolled bill yung mananaig. And what the President signs is the enrolled bill. The enrolled bill does not contain blanks. And quite frankly, Gretchen, I'm surprised with some of the lawyers who are talking about it, because I have yet to see a BICAM report being declared unconstitutional. I have yet to see a committee report being declared unconstitutional, or a bill being declared unconstitutional. It's part of the process. What you declare unconstitutional is a law, not a BICAM report.
Because the BICAM is creation of Congress, diba, to help reconcile,
yes,
the bills of both houses. But my question is, are you willing to have the BICAM sessions live stream? Because there's also that proposal to promote transparency and accountability.
It's actually open to the public. When I was finance chair of the Senate, we opened it to the public. You know what happened? Nobody attended. Not a single member of media actually went. Why? Because when they saw what was happening, they thought it was too boring.
Saan po ito? Saan po ito ginaganap?
When I was finance chair a long time ago, it was in the PCA building. Now it was held in the House of Representatives. But what's being done there? Staff of the Senate and the House actually meet, talking to their respective computers and trying to reconcile the figures approved by the House and the Senate. And then presenting the figures to both chairs, and both chairs deciding how to go about it.
Pero nakarating po sa atin, parang pinaikot daw yung papel na maraming blanco.
Parang hindi naman yata.
Hindi.
Grabe
ganun.
naman yun.
Okay.
The BICAM report was
clarify.
now submitted to the members of the chamber, both the House and the Senate, and they signed it. But again,
Which already filled with the right numbers.
there is a provision there, as I said, that says if there are any blanks, because report summary lang yun nandun eh. Pero may blank, I'm sure, sa loob nun somewhere. It should be filled up by the
Okay.
Committee on Appropriations before the enrolled bill is given to the President.
Okay. But the other thing that's been questioned are the unprogrammed appropriations, yung pagtaas nung
Unprogrammed.
unprogrammed appropriations. Also the provisions for AIX and AKAP.
Okay. What about it?
I mean, yun po, hindi po ba parang prone to abuse yun kapag we put the major projects under unprogrammed appropriations?
Unprogrammed appropriations are not part of the budget. In fact, it's not part of the total amount of the budget. Why? The release of unprogrammed funds are contingent. Contingent upon increase in tax revenue, windfall being received by government, unforeseen revenue being raised by government. So it is conditional. Number two, AKAP had no regulations in 2024. We put in regulations in the 2025 proposed budget. In 2024, it was there, but there were no regulations. Now, in 2024, AKAP was not inept. In 2025, AKAP was not inept, but the SWD still handled and released it. So there is an implied acquiescence on the part of the DSWD because the President could very well have decided not to release AKAP. Up to today, Gretchen, the President can decide not to release it. Because he has that power to impound
Executive power.
items in the budget.
Okay. You said that you were for a total ban on gambling. Tapos nabanggit nyo rin na bakit nga ba natin hindi hahabulin tong PIGO kung yung POGO nga ay binan natin.
I was questioning why we have PIGO. Why PIGO is strong now. We banned POGO, which basically prohibits the Chinese or foreigners from gambling because we said it's bad. So why are we allowing gambling for Filipinos? If it's bad for foreigners, isn't it bad for us too? Now, if they say, well, we're earning a lot from PIGO, well, we were earning a lot from POGO too. But we decided, given the social ills, that this is better, not having it. So we lost POGO, but PIGO was strengthened.
So PIGO referring to
inland gaming.
Serving Filipinos when it comes to gambling.
PIGO basically means inland gaming. P, Philippine, inland gaming operations.
Are you also looking at legislating towards that? Is that on the agenda?
I am personally at the stage of asking how much are they earning? How much is the GGR, the gross gaming revenue? Because the GGR is equivalent to the amounts of money the Filipinos are losing. So, gaano kalaki ba yung natatalo ng Pilipino sa sugal? At timbangin ngayon natin, magkano ba yung nakuha ng gobyerno galing dito? Magkano ba yung bumabalik sa Pilipino? And then, let's decide based
Medyo
on
mahirap po ata mag-define kasi talamak din yung online gambling na legal. I mean, parang paano malalaman kung ano doon yung, yung PIGO, at alin doon yung meron din yung gaming, online gaming. Is that the same? I mean, putting all of those aside, dami natin nakikitang mga billboards for those companies
I think there are
and apps.
4 or 5 or about 10.
So yung PIGO po, kasama po yun?
Kasama yan.
Kasama yun.
Kasama yan. Lahat na online.
Okay.
Yung POGO, offshore yan. Yun yung pinagbawal na meron pa rin naiiwan ngayon. So kung yung bawal meron pa, ano pa kaya yung legal? Meron din sigurado ako nakahalok illegal doon.
Okay. On a final note, I know we're on a break still. What are your plans? I mean, for your own personal life, kamusta si Heart?
Me? She's not here. She's abroad. She'll be back sometime mid-March, actually. Nothing. I have administrative work in the Senate. I report for work about, again, 3-4 times a week because even if you don't have sessions. And I'm campaigning for some friends. And I'm going home to the province campaigning for our party there. So that's basically what's preoccupying my time. And of course, doing my usual wellness and gym for longevity.
Is she surprised that you are in the middle of all of this? I mean, has she already adjusted?
We have an agreement. She will never interfere nor concern herself with politics, and neither will I with the showbiz. So we have a good working relationship in regard to that. She's not affected at all.
Pagka tapos po ng termino po niyo ng 2028, meron ba kayong mga binabalak na?
Actually, tinatamad na ako tumakbo. Ito lang. I can still run for election, but I'm thinking about it. But right now, I'm more inclined to simply look for other things to do. I've been in government for over 27 years, so tama naman na siguro.
Showbiz na rin.
Hindi nga pwede. Hindi siya pwede pumasok sa politika, hindi ako pwede pumasok sa showbiz.
Hindi talaga. So, hindi na kayo pwede mag-artista?
Hindi.
Na.
Grabe naman, wala namang kukuha. Wala namang kukuha din.
Okay, maraming salamat. We know
Thank
you're a
you,
busy man. Thank you so much for your time.
Likewise,
for clarifying so many of the issues and questions that the public has. Thank you for joining us on Morning Matters.
Likewise,
Hope
thank
to have you again. Maraming salamat. We have Senate President Cheese Escudero on impeachment and other bills, his roles in the Senate, and other things that we need to figure out in the coming months. Maraming salamat. Today's episode of Morning Matters. This is Gretchen Ho reporting to you live from the Vatican City. Stay tuned as we give you more on the Pope right here on One News. All sides, all the time.